Live from our studios here in Kokomlemle, Accra, this is Joy News Prime with me, Samuel Kojo Brace. In this bulletin, Bank of Ghana in urgent search for recapitalization support from government following historic 60.8 billion loss that has left it significantly weakened. The BOG, however, says its loss was due to government's debt exchange program. Now, also, Parliament orders Finance Minister to submit government's debt restructuring details of the program to the House. And campaign team of Alan Chamantin accuses the camp of Vice President Dr. Bawumia of using government establishment to induce delegates. More as campaign team of the Vice President hits back, describing the allegation as a low point. Now, the Bank of Ghana's loss of more than 60 billion cedis was due to domestic debt exchange program, which the country recently undertook prior to the IMF bailout. The BOG is said to have spent almost 70 million cedis on computer-related expenses, 131 million cedis for motor and vehicle maintenance, and also 97 million cedis for foreign and domestic travels, among others. Speaking with Pius Kojobaka, the Director of Research at the BOG, Philip Abradu Otu, said the bank took a 50% principal haircut on its non-marketable instrument, which was around 64.5 billion cedi. According to him, despite the loss, the bank is still in a position to discharge its mandate of pursuing price stability.
There were three key items, if you'd permit me to explain. So as a result of the domestic debt exchange, we had a 50% principal haircut on our non-marketable instruments, which was around 64.5 billion. So we took a haircut of 50. But remember, no other institution, the private sector and the banks did not take a haircut in all of this. It is the Bank of Ghana that has been the shock absorber to the domestic debt exchange to ensure that we return to debt sustainability over the medium term. As I was explaining, we have the marketable instruments, the non-marketable instrument, and COCOBO's loans to BOG were all put in the perimeter of the debt exchange, and that resulted for the loss. These three items alone accounted for 53.1 billion out of the loss of 60.8. This is close to 90% of the loss. And you cannot say that the domestic debt exchange has not had any impact. It's purely a domestic debt exchange impact on our balance sheet. Yes, of course, there were other things, but those other things were very minor on our balance sheet. Yes, we have a negative equity. We think you shouldn't be worried because I think the issue that arises is whether the bank will continue to be policy solvent. It's an issue of policy solvency. And with policy solvency, the issue is whether we can continue to discharge our mandate of pursuing price stability and financial stability despite the negative equity. And the answer is yes, we can. So we can do that. Policy solvency requires realized revenues to cover costs and build longer-term capital reserves. But I think that is not to say that, yes, we don't need to recover. We will have to recover as we move along. But will we be policy solvent as we move on? I think, yes, we will be policy solvent. But again, we also need to recognize that we are putting in place steps and actions to ensure that we return back to positive levels. So some of the measures that we are putting in place is that we'll be retaining profits to build capital back up. We'll then be optimizing the Bank of Ghana's investment portfolio and operating cost mix to bolster efficiency. And then again, I think you said this at the beginning of your program, we will be making an assessment for the potential need for recapitalization support from the government in the medium term.
Now, earlier, the minority in Parliament served notice that will subject some recent expenditure made by the Bank of Ghana to value for money audit. According to acting ranking member on the Finance Committee, Isaac Adongo, a future NDC government will probe these expenditures.
And I want to tell Deloitte and Touche that we are paying attention to its work at the Bank of Ghana and that it should apply the full impact of the regulatory violations. They cannot go and do this type of work. And I want to tell Dr. Addison that in future we will subject these numbers to value for money audits.
Now, Isaac Adongo also insists a purported write-off of debt owed by the government as void because Parliament did not approve of it by a resolution.
The so-called write-off of 32 billion is inconsequential. It has no parliamentary approval. And as a matter of fact, the accounts should be restated as prior year actions next year when the auditors get back there because there is no parliamentary approval. We have not written off any 32 million. Of course, impairment, we don't have a problem with impairment because that is a standard accounting practice. But write-off, they must come under Section 53 of the Public Financial Management Act.
But how confident can we be in the assurance from the Bank of Ghana? Dr. Richmond Etuahene is a banking consultant and he joins us via Zoom. Now, grateful to you for joining us, sir. The BOG says they are not to blame for what happened. Isn't that a reality looking at what happened to the economy?
Thank you very much, Grace. Term reality is a bit subjective. The point is that the law says it clearly that you shouldn't do 10% of your past revenue. And the fiscal discipline, the fiscal responsibility, I say that we shouldn't do 5%. So if you breach the law and you decided to do it, I don't think it's the reality. The reality is that if they needed to do that, why wouldn't they seek an approval from the Parliament? Prior approval from Parliament. And Parliament could have used its power and say, look, do what you are expected to do. But it's not when you do it and you tell us that whether you're right or wrong. I think that is why the Parliament is there. When you were going to have the overdraft financing government, there was nothing that stopped them from taking it to Parliament to seek prior approval before what they did. Unfortunately, it wasn't done. So for me, it is neither here nor there.
Okay. Now, they are assuring us that they are in control and are putting in place measures to return to positive levels. What are the critical things that the Bank of Ghana should look at?
Hello?
Doc, I can hear you. If you can hear me, I'm trying to find out from you that as the Bank of Ghana is assuring that they are in control and are putting in place measures to return to positive levels, what are the critical things that they need to consider in their effort to return to positive levels? Doc, I'm trying to find out from you, with your knowledge of the dealings of the Bank of Ghana, what should they do, or the critical things they need to pay attention to as they engage in practices or they implement effort to try and ensure that they return to positive levels?
Well, in positive levels, as Abradi Otu said, you have to look at retention. But retention will take you a considerable time. Even if I average the 1.5 over the last 5 years and divide it by the losses, it will take you close to 42 years before, if you retain everything. But in accounting, you don't retain everything in reserves. So it is not possible to retain everything.
Okay.
Another one that he said that they want to rationalization. I mean, look at efficiency and rationalization. It's a good thing. But the most important thing for me is that if we have stick to the law, we wouldn't have found ourselves. So now that the IMF is telling us zero financing, and it's an IMF order, they will stick to it and they will never finance the government physical debt. If they do that, maybe we'll be able to. But however, there is no way. Because if you look at the IMF policy documents, if you wouldn't mind, IMF country report 23168, I think page 42 or thereabout, says that Bank of Ghana would have to do the DDEP. And after that, The Bank of Ghana and the government should seek to recapitalize the central bank.
Okay.
That is what is in the book. It is in the whole work. So it is not somebody who is telling us that they are going to recapitalize. The question is that they have to recapitalize. Because you see, they said policy credibility. Fine,
okay.
Fine. But in the eyes of who?
Okay.
It's not in the eyes of Ghanaians. It's in the eyes of your correspondent banks. The Federal Reserve of US, the Bank of England, the Eurozone, where you keep your money. They will look at you whether you wet the salt. But if you say policy solvent, you're not dealing with only Ghanaians. You're dealing with international businesses.
Okay.
So you must make sure.
All right.
And
Doc.
again, let me finish. Again, this fiscal is going to add fiscal pressure to already the public finance. Because if the government decides to finance it or recapitalize it, it's going to add to the debt, which will not help us to achieve the 60% debt GDP ratio set in the IMF policy document.
Very tough times ahead of us. Grateful to you, Doc, for joining us here. Now, still staying with finance, a minority motion to compel Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to present government's debt restructuring to Parliament for consideration has been passed by the House. Speaker of Parliament Alban Bagbin has consequently ordered Ken Ofori-Atta to present details to Parliament through its Finance Committee. Our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante joins us with details. Now, Kweku, the minority leader moved the motion. What was his argument?
Well, according to Dr. Kisela Tuforsen, if you look at the concept of this debt restructuring agreement that has been put together by the House, it appears that the finance minister had acted unilaterally in terms of his failure or refusal to come to Parliament to brief MPs to seek the approval. According to him, if Parliament gives the minister the power to contract a loan, for instance, the minister cannot by himself unilaterally review the terms of that agreement. He needs to come to Parliament. Let's listen to Dr. Kisela Tuforsen on the floor, move the motion for that committee to be set, for that inquiry to be taking place, and that argument he advanced.
The minister responsible for finance must first seek approval from us before he goes and restructure our debt. He doesn't have to go out there and restructure the debt before he informs us. For example, if the country is insolvent or for any reason the country cannot repay its debt, it is only right for the minister responsible for finance to present a policy document to us and to inform us that Ghana will have to go through a debt restructuring program and to give us the contours of the debt restructuring program. So, Speaker, the minister decided to organize a press conference at the Ministry of Information and inform the nation without coming to Parliament. So, Speaker, this is a major government policy. If the minister, for any reason, has decided to write off the debt that government of Ghana owes to the Central Bank of Ghana, the Bank of Ghana, it is only right for the minister responsible for finance to bring a document before us and to inform us that he are going to write off a certain debt that the government of Ghana owes to the Central Bank. The minister cannot unilaterally write off debt that is owned to the Central Bank. Speaker, it is for that reason that I request of the Minister of Finance to present to us the contours, the details of government debt restructuring program.
Kweku, how did the majority leadership respond to this?
Well, so they said that they were not opposed in principle to this idea of inquiring into this debt exchange program. However, they believe that Parliament already have processes. For instance, the Finance Committee to look into this matter. Let's listen to Frank Anadombre. He is the Majority Chief Whip.
There's a fair demand from the sponsors of this private member motion to ask of the exchequer of our country to come and apprise the House of the trust of these important national policy, especially in the times we find ourselves as a country and also in global context. So from the outset, I have no problem with that. Safe to say that, Speaker, if you look into our orders, and I was, as my respected leader was moving the motion, I tend to look at Order 155. And Speaker, we have a committee of parliament, finance committee, with clear powers and mandate. Order 155, Speaker, says, for the purposes, Speaker, with your permit, purposes of effectively performing its functions, each committee shall have all such powers, rights, and privileges as vested in the High Court of Justice or a justice of the High Court at trial in respect, and it goes on and on. So essentially, our committees are clothed with legal powers. And for me, this matter shouldn't have taken members or a member to move a private member motion. So the begging question is, I see my good friend, the Honorable Adongo, who is very eloquent on these matters. What is the Finance Committee doing? You have the powers. I was expecting that these matters could have been discussed at the Finance Committee, and an appropriate report is brought to plenary for discussion and adoption or otherwise.
So, Kweku, after both sides had put up the argument, how did the House decide on it?
Well, yes, so what the House did was to vote on this because there was no consensus on both sides. The Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, had to put it to a vote. Eventually, the minority had enough numbers in the House, they won. The Speaker consequently directed that the Finance Minister must present this policy for consideration through the Finance Committee of the House. The Finance Committee will consider it, present a report to the House for approval or rejection.
Those in favor of the adoption of the motion number 29 at page 23 of the order paper, say aye. Aye. Those against, say no. The ayes have it. The motion is accordingly adopted. Honorable members, what we've just done is to call upon the minister to present the government debt restructuring program for consideration by the House. I will proceed to direct that this presentation be made by the minister before the Committee on Finance. And then the Committee on Finance will then report the comprehensive recommendation to the House for consideration. Chairman, ranking member of the Committee for Finance should take up this matter, get the minister to appear before the committee to present the government's debt restructuring program. The committee, together with the ministry, will deliberate over it, and then the committee will now submit what they have in the form of a report to the House for consideration and other adoption or rejection by the House. I so direct.
Before we go, for nothing at all, we know that the Speaker is someone who has changed the way the speakers dress. How has the House been receiving his style of dressing?
In fact, just about 10 minutes ago, the Speaker of Parliament walked in dressed like the Emir of Kano in Nigeria with that head too. The MPs are quite excited about that. In fact, when he entered, all of them were on their feet, excited that the Speaker of Parliament is bringing this African formal way of dressing into Parliament. According to some of them, this is something that it must be encouraged. That ceremonial gap has been ditched except for formal occasions. But MPs are really excited about this new dressing of the Speaker, dressed like the Emir of Kano. Just walked in Parliament about 20 minutes ago to deliver his closing address before Parliament takes its break and return in October.
Well, you're still watching Joy News Prime. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more stories to stay with us. Welcome back from the break. Now, for the past 2 months, the residents of Princess Town in Ahanta West Municipality have been cut off from the other parts of the municipality as their main bridge linking the main Agonam-Kwanta-Elubo Road and the district's capital has collapsed. Despite their pleas, there has been no government intervention to rectify the issue. I have been to the site, and this is what my camera captured. The impact of the collapsed bridge on the community has been immense. Farmers are seen struggling to transport their produce, carrying them across the bridge to be loaded onto waiting vehicles on the other side. Traders traveling to the capital, Agunankwanta, also face significant challenges, having to carry their wares across the damaged bridge before continuing their journey. Auntie Isi is frustrated at government's seeming neglect.
Me say, yeah, but two back a budibilika. Mother to obey the among so a Modica and a second so want to. And no one else, I dare say, we are crying there. Beba Beman or Bewaro had a chocolate, yeah, babs so some cooking cake. Motion.
This sentiment is shared by many in the community, including a driver who reveals he has been stranded in the area since the bridge caved in, making less than 100 cedis in sales per day.
Sebahana pa nakadere babasha obey your mobile. Mami fu penufu a why then ba ko twa rubber why then wodi ko ske wodi ko gre on wo ba na wo besa so desia na wo dan so wo da so abobo fufu de ko go abobo fufu no wo soa osa wala jina ba yo ahomtew sisi a eduma no won wo eduma temi dabes for no kas
Omampin Susamfaho, a community leader at Abase, one of the affected communities, says they almost lost a pregnant woman as a result of the situation.
I had a complaint from my community that a pregnancy woman was about to deliver. And because of the situation of the bridge, the problem was so huge that she nearly died. She nearly died because by the time the car came here and then they crossed the bridge, there were no car here to take her to the hospital. Okay. So in fact, they waited and then called for a car. By the time the car came, the situation was getting worse.
The chief of Tumentu, an affected community, Nana Ezia Ntwa III, is angry at the unresponsiveness of government to this urgent matter.
I mean, I call the Kabian and Labriche comparison. Rapid response. Because he may come as a community, even at tourist spot like this forest, Captain Point Forest at where Francis, okay, Captain Point for a lucky more first survey. They will remember the only forest of West Africa come up projected into the sea. It accumulated the tourist, the biozone. So why? Okay.
He warns his people will withhold their vote in the upcoming 2024 elections if the bridge is not repaired promptly.
You can say, Yam Ozedevi, I mean, Bayan for my nearby care by Nesia, your Bamo, Bodoma, I want to know your quite better money at the Adna. You can from now. Baba. Next year, jamais. There is no vote. We are not going to vote for them. Not out on print.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we will show them the red card. Okay. Your fault, nail the draft man ball. A Jimmy and enemy you. Matthew, you can crib. Kebi Kidio show. Mazama call my people at Tumentum, but in there. Okay. So let them hear from my voice that this is from one to them.
The people here are calling on the government to intervene immediately and restore economic life to the area. Now to other stories, and the General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress, NDC, Fifi Fiavi Kwete, has strongly objected to the New Patriotic Party's claim of turning the corner, citing it as a sign of their lack of remorse over their governance failures. He strongly criticized the 2023 media budget's assertion that the ailing economy has been stabilized, describing it as an attempt by the NPP trying to look good in the midst of the storm. He expressed this during an interview with Evans Mensah while leading a party's delegation's courtesy call on the leadership of the Multimedia Group Limited in Accra on Thursday.
I feel that our friends in government need to basically learn a little from what has happened in the very last two years. The kind of collapse we have seen in terms of the economy is one that requires a certain amount of humility. To rush quickly and want to start beating chairs and wanting plaudit, I think is indicating that somehow they have not learned as quickly as they have. By no means can you call this turning the corner. In the first place, further, you can even call turning the corner a situation where inflation has gone up to over 50%. And the fact that you are trying to now bring inflation down to some 30 or a little below 30, you call it 10 in the corner, it's indicating as if the nation has become so low, and our expectations have become so mediocre that we can even dare want to even celebrate a thing of that nature. That's not where we are supposed to be. So to simply rush into jumping the gun and talking about 10 in the corner, it's a little bit again being too, shall I call it, too much desperate to want to spin and look good. There's still a lot of hard work that's ahead of us. So many companies that continue to go down, so many institutions that continue to suffer.
Finally, I believe the West is behind us. You don't agree that the West is now behind us with the IMF on board? That's what he's looking for and saying, well, things are beginning to improve. Inflation is beginning to drop. You have interest rates dropping as well. For him, that's West behind us, positives all ahead.
That would be a little too easy to say. I feel the bigger problem is not what we see in the economy, but actually the value systems and the principles that actually led us to where we are. And I don't see there is a change in those value systems. What do I feel are those value systems? One, a group that simply believes that all you need to do when you're in power is to try to spin, to try to use slogans, to live beyond your means, to borrow, with recklessness, and also to show irresponsibility in not accepting responsibility. And I don't think they've learned that lesson.
Meanwhile, explaining the rationale behind their visit to the Multimedia Group Limited, Fifi Kwete revealed that the NDC party is taking decisive steps to finalize parliamentary primaries in the remaining 15 constituencies by the end of September this year.
We decided as a party to start a series of media visitation. We actually should have done this right from the very beginning when I became General Secretary. But of course, we came in straight with quite a number of activities, administrative things that have really held us up all the way to the election of Flagbearer. Soon after that, then we move into the by-elections, and also I would say we feel this is a nice moment to really do what we should have done right from the beginning. Basically, to just establish a relationship, build bridges, define areas where we can work in partnership for the sake of Ghana, not necessarily for the sake of NDC at all, but for the sake of Ghana. We believe we all have the same vision for the country, to see a country that becomes great and strong. And we believe the media plays a key role in making sure that happens. And there are areas where we can improve each other, to become more tolerant, to be able to hone down on issues that we think are very important for the country. Generally, to create an atmosphere where the media will be allowed to do its job well, and we also in the political space.
Yawaso was gone, and I think 15 other constituencies are still outstanding in your parliamentary primaries. So what's the update on that?
I would say that they are the next ones we are looking at. We actually have agreed already to do it in two separate phases. We'll be doing what we call the northern, the central zone. In that central zone, we'll have Eastern region, Ashanti region, and Ahafo region, those three. And we're looking at making sure we close those ones by the end of August this month. And then we'll be left with what I call the coastal, or let's call it the southern zone. That'll be Greater Accra, Central Region, Western Region, and I think Western North. So
now, the campaign team of Alan Chirmanting is alleging the camp of Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is using government institutions to induce and threaten delegates. According to them, despite the claim by President Akufo-Addo that he is not supporting any aspirant, the observations point to the contrary about his establishment. Boabing Asamoah, who speaks for the Alan Chirmanting team site, OT region, where some district assemblies are reportedly using the district common fund to purchase and distribute weedy sites to induce the delegate to support the Vice President. He spoke to Samuel Mbura of our political desk.
The establishment is not working that way. The establishment, which includes the president and others, are demonstrating otherwise. The finance minister chats and says that he is going to spend all the money he can to make sure that somebody wins.
Who is that somebody?
That somebody is the establishment candidate.
Who is the establishment candidate?
That somebody is the vice president. We are all aware that he is the establishment candidate because the establishment is behind him. And the president says he is not behind him. So it's a signal that I think that the party must pick up. If the president says that he is not behind anybody, then the party delegates must stand up. The party delegates must resist any attempt from.
How do you want them to do this? How do you want the party or the delegates to do this?
By rejecting some of the inducements and the threats.
What
For example, that is Assembly's Common Fund.
I see.
We were in OT, and this Assembly's Common Fund was sharing weedicides and fertilizers at this time to people. Why would they be doing?
Were they sharing to delegates?
They're sharing to delegates.
Those who be taking part in the Super Delegates Congress?
Sharing to delegates.
And you have evidence?
We were there when it happened. We arrived immediately after the sharing. So you had delegates with boxes, some of them carrying it home, some of it with them right in the room where we were having the meeting.
But spokesperson for the campaign team of the Vice President, Sami Awuku, while stating that claims of government establishment supporting Dr. Bawumia are baseless, dismissed allegations of their camp using District Assembly common funds to induce delegates.
I've stated that the Honorable John Peter Amewu is a minister of the government, and in this government, and supporting the Honorable Alan Chemati. The Honorable Abna Osei is a Deputy Minister for Finance at the Ministry of Finance, supporting the Honorable Alan Chemati. You've had members of Parliament openly supporting the Honorable Alan Chemati. So when you say that others supporting Dr. Bawumia is wrong, then that means you're only picking and choosing. And I will repeat, if the principle is wrong, then tell me that nobody should support anybody. Let's all become quiet men and women in the party and only watch the process. We are part of the decision making. Well, I vote. I'm a voter. I'm a delegate. The super delegate because I'm a member of the National Council representing the Eastern region. And I'm also a former national organizer. So with these two voting rights, I can only vote once in one category. Either I choose to vote as a former national organizer or I vote as a member representing the Eastern region on the National Council.
Well, his specific accusation is that, or allegation is that, they were in the OT region and the District Assembly was using the District Common Fund to purchase spray fertilizer for delegates. And then he made an allegation that it is in support of your candidature, and they feel it is an abuse of delegates. Yes.
I think people should get serious about these things. Because I don't think I have it. Else we'll be chasing things in circles. If you have, if you can prove an allegation of wrongdoing, that's a very serious matter.
Now, to other stories. In response to the recent uproar over the launch of the new National Affordable Housing Program at Pokwase and Kumasi by the minority, the Minister for Works and Housing, Asenso Boakye, firmly asserts that parliamentary approval is not required for most of the agreements under the initiative. The minority had raised concerns about the project proceeding without consent from Parliament, questioning government's actions. But Works and Housing Minister clarified that while one of the contractors is a foreign company, majority of the contractors are local, thus not necessitating Parliament's approval for their involvement in the ambitious housing program. We'll hear from him shortly. First, here is former Deputy Works and Housing Minister Samson Ahi, who says it is illegal for government to go ahead with the launch.
Order paper, page 8. Under laying of papers, this particular project is supposed to be laid in Parliament today. This has not been done, which means the EPC agreement has not been approved in Parliament. So if you have presented such a document to Parliament for approval, it has not even been laid. Yet we are there cutting salt to commence work. What does that mean? Is it a slap on Parliament? Is it a disrespect to government structures or what? Are you not surprised that we are supposed to take this EPC agreement through? That has not been done, but we are rushing to cancel. We were supposed to do it yesterday, but we raised these important questions and we are waiting for response from them, from the ministry, but they have gone ahead in spite of the fact that these questions have been requested. They have gone ahead today and cancel. And because we want to support any cause that provides homes for Ghanaians, we will support it.
We can now listen to the justification by the Sector Minister, Francis Asenso Boakye.
everything goes well, we should be able to complete, as many units as possible so that people can come. We have structured in such a way that we don't want to wait till all the 8,000 units to finish before people can start living in them. Right. Yeah, we have staggered it incrementally so that at a point people can live in them. I don't think it's the Western Housing Committee. It's the minority side of the committee. That
exactly. That held the news conference.
Parliamentary approval. Yes. There's only one parliamentary approval that is before Parliament. And it's because one of the developers is a foreign company.
The Moroccan
company. And therefore, because it's a Moroccan company and taking part in this, you have to seek parliamentary approval. But the rest are not foreign companies, so no need for parliamentary approval for them. And the project itself does not need parliamentary approval. It's not a loan. The government of Ghana money. We don't need parliamentary approval to start the project.
Now, the Eswajaman district in the eastern region is grappling with health challenges concerning its abolo sellers. Rebecca Dede Bante, the district health director, has highlighted the serious risks faced by these vendors while performing their job. Joy News' Elvis Washington has been to the area and has filed this report.
The Eswajaman District Director of Health in the Eastern Region, Rebecca Dede Bante, has raised concerns about the health risks faced by street hawkers in the district due to their job. She warns of a surge in respiratory tract infections and malaria cases. She said the nature of their work exposes them to a high number of respiratory tract infections and malaria cases.
In the Eswajaman district, just as in any community in Ghana, malaria is the number one. And then other diseases like respiratory tract infection and so on and so forth. For the people, sometimes I look at them and I cry to God to have mercy because they come into contact with so many people day in and day out. Looking at them, we don't have the data for me to back my argument with, but I mean they are exposed to respiratory tract infection. Why am I saying this? You know, as cars move by, they pass by, they blow dust. So whilst they are by the roadside, they inhale some of these dust, and definitely it comes with microorganisms. So they come down with respiratory tract infections.
Despite concerted efforts, the District Health Directorate is facing hurdles in addressing the issue due to logistical and medical challenges.
With regards to personnel, it used to be bad, but now it's getting better, but we still need more. Because looking at we have, you know, as a district, it has been zoned into 6 sub-districts. So as we speak here, we have 45 CHIPS zones, but 34 CHIPS compounds. So we still need more CHIPS compound. I mean, with regards to health facility, to be able to carry health service delivery to the doorstep of the good people of Eswajaman. So we still need more. But in terms of logistics, sometimes it's challenging. Health promotion is important. There is the need for everybody. You see, Ghana Health Service is the implementing agency, all right. But stakeholder intervention is also very important. NGOs come to our aid, they come and assist us collaboratively so that together we preach the gospel to our people. So what NABROC and NILDA is doing today, to me, is the best, and other NGOs should learn from it.
All right, so welcome back. Time for us to bring you showbiz, and Becky Bex is in the house to give you all the best. Well, I'm not sure she's going to be here tomorrow, so let's take all the best that we can from her today. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Let's talk about the movie industry, because Kuma actor Kojo Nkansan Wayne has made a plea to government to create a sole ministry for the movie industry in Ghana. According to him, if any president of the republic is truly passionate about the creative arts industry, the charge to revive the Ghanaian film industry would be prioritized by creating a sector ministry solely for creative arts. The movie industry creates jobs and gives opportunities for many young Ghanaians to make money and provide support for their families. Kojo Nkansan was addressing the media at the launch of his movie, Mr. President.
One teaching in Channel Quan, on said, Miss One teaching in Channel Quan film, Mon Camum, Camus and a man, but also a Nipano, a bassa.
We want government to separate the creative arts industry from the rest. The ministry should give special attention to movie production. For instance, the current deputy minister is well versed in music but not movies. We need someone with much understanding of the sector. Now, the actors are those investing in the sector to capitalize.
Yeah. I mean, he's my favorite. Really.
Yeah, he's good.
He's my favorite.
He's good.
Yeah.
He's yet to come on E-Vibes, so maybe you should
really?
call him.
I'll call him. I'll tell him that Kojo now you're there. Shenabra E-Vibes, so because that's a platform of Basso Biabon, you know.
So but let's move. Let's talk about the Ghanaian music industry. Stonebwoy was on Soy. It's a radio station, and he's been talking about Ghana's representation on the global stage. So there's been this conversation about how we're not there. What is wrong with us? Why are we not selling? Why are we not selling arenas? Why are we not selling the stadiums outside? Here is what Stonebwoy has to say. But Brace, we have Throwback Thursday today for those of you who love Chinese. Journey to the West is a Chinese for those of you who miss church service because of this, for
you have to say
our parents who
the name was Tashon.
Tashon.
You say Tashon, we really miss this. Would miss Sunday school for it,
Yeah, all the time. You did?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow, that's a very old movie. But on the Tashon no
we call it a wrap. There's more on myjoyonline.com. Please do enjoy your holiday.
Say it in Chinese.
In Chinese.
MyJoyonline.com.
Joyonline.com. Prime Business is up next.